Hello, everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. I think it was just last year. I did a video on the many uses of wine, and I'm going to be talking about some of that today, of your homemade wine. But I wanted to talk about why you should learn to do it. And I just want to cover it again because there's a lot of people that will look at, well, winemaking, they'll have different reasons. Either I don't want to get into it because it just sounds so complicated. Because yes, there are websites and people that make it sound like it's this absolutely complicated things that while you do need some special equipment, it's not as much as they make it sound. And it's not that expensive to get into. It's really not. And then the other side of it is a lot of people don't drink. Well, generally, we don't drink. Once in a great while, we may enjoy just a little glass of our homemade wine because it tastes so good. But that's kind of rare. Mostly, I make it for other purposes. And a lot of people who don't drink think, oh, this isn't for me because we don't drink. Now, there's some people that just absolutely cannot have alcohol in the house. So that definitely would not apply to them. And I totally get that. If it's not that, then there are a lot of reasons why it's a good idea to learn how to make wine. If nothing else, it is fun. It's like making soap. Soap is fun. It's fun to make soap. It's or like when you're canning something and you're so afraid of it, and then you finally can something for the first time, like pressure can, or either one, pressure can, water bath can, and you're like, wow, this is easy. This is fun. What else can I can? Winemaking is very similar. So when I first got into it at all, I've been wanting to try it for a long time. I started off with making mead because it sounded to me like the process was simpler than making wine. I thought wine must be a lot more difficult. It's not. But mead, I suppose, could be the most simple because just a plain mead is nothing but honey, water, and whatever. You don't even have to use a starter. I always did. And that's where I first started making the ginger bug, which then developed into my fermentation starter out of whatever, because you don't have to make it from ginger. You can make it from anything, but you can't call it a ginger bug at that point. And the mead, just by one lady's really simple instructions on a blog. And I'm like, this is easy. I can do this. So for a gallon of mead, it's 3 cups of honey plus your cup of your liquid fermentation starter, which it could be a ginger bug, raisin, raspberry, orange peel, whatever you make it from. And then enough water to equal a gallon. So that would be about 3 quarts because you got 3 cups of honey. You got your cup of starter. That's going to be a quart altogether. So then you just have 3 more quarts of water. Mix it all well. Put it in your jug. Put the airlock on. Leave it for 30 days, approximately. So the mead is a little bit more simple. Though from the first moment I made mead, I never made it that simple. I always added fruit to it and always did it different every time so that I could try different flavors. So sometimes it was fresh fruit, sometimes it was dried fruit, but orange, cinnamon, and clove. I've done kiwi and lime. I've done strawberry. I've done raspberry. I've done blueberry. I've done plum rose. Just I had plums. I had rose petals, threw them in there. Always experimenting. So that's what makes it so fun. And wine is really no different when it comes to the fun factor. The difference in wine is that you're starting with a juice rather than honey water. The fact that you can be as creative as you want to be, making the wines or the meads, mixing whatever kinds of fruits you want, that's part of the fun factor. And then you might think, I'll never find a rose plum wine. And that sounds really interesting. I'm going to make my own. Anyway, the creativity part of it is it's great. It's wonderful that you can do that. And now what you have is you have a product that you can then use for so many different things. It's easy. It is, like I said, it doesn't require a lot of equipment to get started. I mean, even if all you have is some kind of jug. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a whole gallon. You can start by making something smaller. As long as you have something you can put over the top that will prevent oxygen from getting into it and let air out. You can buy airlocks with the drilled cork that goes into the, they make different sizes. But since I always use gallon jugs, I have the one that fits to the gallon size jug. Well, if you go to that video, the one on how to make wine, I have all that stuff linked in there. The jugs, the airlock with the drilled stopper. That's all you need to get started. But even then, you can just use a balloon if you're not ready to invest in, okay, well, I have a jug, I have something. Well, you can just take a latex balloon and slip it over there. I still recommend tying it hard in place or using a rubber band that's pretty strong. Because what will happen is once it starts making those gases and it will fill up the balloon will get bigger, and usually it will stay like this, but it could produce so much it can shoot that balloon right off of your jug. So you want something to hold it in place. And then when in about 30 days, you'll see that balloon start to deflate and then kind of flop over. That typically means it's about ready. I tried that with my first batch of mead. It worked. But one of the problems I had with that was I was making a strawberry mead, so I had a lot of fruit in there, and the strawberry pulp went up into the balloon and collected the flavor of the latex. And that got into all of the wine, all of the mead, and it tasted gross. That was my very first batch of mead, and that was disappointing. I mean, the main thing is you really just don't want to get, especially after the 2-week mark, you don't want to get oxygen into your wine or it's going to turn it to vinegar. So unless that's what you're wanting is vinegar, well, then just cover it with a cloth. You don't have to bother with it in airlock. But airlocks are cheap. They're like $2-3 a piece for an airlock with the drilled stopper that you stick it down into. Just make sure you add water to your airlock. Some people put the airlock on there and don't realize they need to add water to it. The water is what's going to prevent the oxygen from getting in, but it lets the gases out. It had a couple different times, 2 or 3 different times. I was watching my it's been like a week and there's no bubbles in the airlock, and I'm like, I can't figure out I don't know what's going on. And I just thought to ask, did you put water in the airlock? Oh, am I supposed to do that? Yeah, there's a little fill line there. You're not going to see bubbles going through the airlock unless you have something for the air to go, or the gases to go through. It was kind of funny. And that's fun too. It's fun just watching that, the things, anybody who's ever fermented anything or made sourdough. I mean, the first time I made like a sourdough starter, just made it from scratch. That was so exciting. It was like a little pet watching that come to life and just, bubble and get bigger. And that's the way I feel about the winemaking or anything like that. When you start seeing it bubble and you're like, it's alive, yay, you did something right. You just see it's alive. And so just watching that is fun. I love going through my kitchen. I got 2 jugs of wine going right now. And I love walking through there and hearing that sound, that bloop, bloop, bloop. I love that. It's such a great feeling. So again, even if you don't drink, just making it is such a fun process. It's an accomplishment. It builds your confidence. It is not complicated. That's the thing that tends to scare people away from even trying. So just understand, like, you can follow people's complicated, you got to add this and you got to add that. No, you don't. You don't have to. You can add clarifiers if you want. I never do. I never have. Sometimes you can simply rack your wine or mead enough that it clarifies it, but not always. Oh, but here's a trick I found. I don't even know why I didn't put the pieces together sooner, is that sometimes you have a really cloudy wine or mead and you just can't seem to get the sediments, the stuff to settle to the bottom so you can pull the juice off or the wine off the top and leave all that sediment. That's with the racking part. So that's where you do have to have something to siphon it with. But even if you don't, you can still drink it. It's not going to, none of that's going to hurt you. It just looks better and does taste better if you're not drinking the sediments at the bottom. It does, that part is okay. Sometimes the sediments or the dregs can have a little bit of a bitter flavor, not always. But at any rate, what I did find that will really help your wine to clarify to the point where at least where things will settle down. And so you can see all the stuff at the top looks nice and clear. And then you've got a nice layer of sediments. Put it in the fridge. Yeah, I've had some where I set it on the counter for days and days. It's like, this is never going to settle down and not be cloudy, so that I can rack it and just get the clear stuff out. I found setting a fridge, it speeds up the process, and you could just forget about it and not have it taking up room on your counter. Even if you just pour it into jars and have an airtight lid by that point, because once it's done, you want to make sure you don't have any oxygen getting in there. And then just let it sit, and then all that stuff will settle down and make like a thick mat at the bottom and make it a lot easier to rack it or even just carefully pour off the top. So little trick there. Now, let me go ahead, and I know I'm going to forget some stuff. So that's why, if you want to go watch my last year's video on the many uses, that's fine, because I might forget some stuff. But I'll just share what I use our wines for the most. The most, right at the top, is making medicinal extracts. That's what it gets used for the most, whether it be for pain, for an antibiotic, a cold and flu. I mean, I have my elderberry syrup, but like that rosemary extract that I'm making, again, I'm finding I really like that one as for a broad range of things: cold and flus, sore throats, coughs, helping to open up and clear out the lungs, an antibiotic, and an antiviral. I love it. It's so easy. And in that case, I do like using fresh rosemary. So that's why I started 3 quarts of it. But also because I had a jug of wine, a half gallon of wine left in this one jug I wanted to get used up, so I can make more wine and get the older grapes out of the freezer, because it won't be all that long from now. Well, I'll have more grapes to go into the freezer and blackberries for making future batches of wine. So I'm trying to free up space. But I realized, I don't have that much wine left. I'm surprised. I actually went through a lot more this year because I was making a lot more different extracts, or we were going through more of them, so I was having to keep making more. Of course, I give some away to the family as well. So you don't have to use wine for extract making, but I like to say that because not only does wine, like your homemade wine, especially if you make it out of something really tasty, going into that extract, it's just going to make it easier to take. Because even though vodka doesn't have a flavor, well, it does. And it's more expensive unless you have a still and you're making your own vodka. It's a lot more expensive than making your own wine from whatever juice you can get from your garden. You can make wine out of your rhubarb. You cut your raw rhubarb up, you freeze it, and then you juice it. Everything juices easier once it's been frozen. Just think about it. You freeze your fruit. When you pull it out, it's got a lot of juice in there. When it thaws out, it's already half juiced. You just got to press the rest out. I've made wines from my apples, juice the apples, and I didn't freeze those. If for nothing else, having wine to make your own medicinal extracts, that right there should be enough reason, because you're going to save a lot of money in having to buy the alcohol. You've got something you made yourself. You know exactly what's in it. A lot of that store-bought wine, by the way, has additives that you might not even know what all that is. There's a lot of vegans probably drinking wine from the store and have no idea they used eggs for clarifiers. They use the egg whites. That's not all they use. I mean, that wouldn't be so bad, but some of the other clarifiers I wouldn't trust. Let's talk about some of the other things I use the homemade wine for. And a lot of times when I'm making an Italian dish, a pasta dish, I like to add, any of my whiter wines, anything that's made out of just the white grapes. I'll add a little bit of that into the pasta water to add a nice flavor to the pasta. It does, so you're just cooking it right in there. And, people who are concerned about the alcohol, remember, most of that's going to get cooked out. And whatever doesn't get cooked out, it's not going to have any kind of effect because you're consuming it as a food. So that food's going to make up the difference. I also like adding my wines a lot of times to my Italian sauces as well. Adds a nice flavor to that. I also will use homemade wine in marinades. You know, like if I'm making jerky and I need to marinate it, homemade wine. I like to marinate chicken breasts every so often and barbecue them. Homemade wine goes in that, along with like either Bragg's or some kind of soy sauce. It's the one time we use soy sauces for anything like that. And I usually go with Bragg's or whatever organic soy, non-GMO soy sauce I can find. Saute, that was the other thing. So marinades, sautés, adding to sauces, adding to pasta water. Those are the four main ways when it comes to cooking. At least that's coming to mind because I didn't write all this stuff down. That I'll use it in the kitchen. So for culinary purposes. So medicinal purposes, culinary purposes, and then there's always the barter. Don't forget about that. You can know, I like making sure I have wine on hand, though I have yet to barter with anyone. I've offered to barter for, like, if someone's deep sea fishing or any kind of fishing. Not that Patrick never fishes, usually just doesn't have time, but hopefully he'll get to go here soon again. But I'd gladly barter with some local fishermen with some of my wine. And I know there was somebody who was going to take me up on it, and they never did. I don't know if they forgot or what. But there is that. So I still like to keep some on hand unless someone ever wants to take my offer for that. I'd gladly exchange a bottle of like this. I would exchange something like this where it's all packaged up nicely for however many pounds of whatever it is, you know, because I know the different types of fish they're going to be worth different costs. You know, like you got halibut and all that. So that's something to consider. If especially if money's tight, but you can make wine, you can have a way that you can obtain other things that you need from people who have or can do what you cannot do, or even a service. So yeah. And then also just having I do like keeping some wine on hand for events to share with family. And let's see, I know I'm forgetting some other uses that I probably covered in that video. But yeah, that's the thing is you don't have to be a wine drinker to want to make it, because you can use it for so many other things. Oh, you can also use it in a pinch. You can use it for helping to disinfect. When I do choose to bottle it up and make it look nice, I use recycled avocado or almond oil bottles because they're dark, they're square, so I can just stack them nicely next to each other. They have a nice lid that is airtight. When you got that on there, I have never had any of these turn to vinegar in the bottle. That's the key. That's why you want an airtight lid when you go to store it, because otherwise, if it's not airtight and it gets oxygen in there, it's going to turn to vinegar, which would be fine too. But if it stays in there, then that vinegar is eventually, and it's still getting oxygen exposure, the vinegar is going to turn too if it's raw. Distilled vinegar never will. That's why it can be stored in plastic bottles with no real airtight lid. But raw vinegar will eventually turn back into just plain water. But it's not plain water. It's nasty, gross water by that point. Let me finish off this topic by saying, don't be afraid of it, and don't assume that just because you don't drink means you should never bother trying to make wine when it's got so many other great purposes. And if nothing else, at least for the medicinal ways that you can use it that would save you money in having to buy vodka or rum or bourbon or whatever other spirit. You don't have to have a spirit to make an extract. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and take care, and God bless. See ya.